He thought he was just pulling over another driver. But 10 minutes later, this cop would be standing frozen, realizing he had just humiliated one of the most powerful judges in the state. The flashing red and blue lights filled Daniel Carter's rearview mirror, a jarring interruption to what had been a quiet drive home from the courthouse. It was early evening, the sky fading to deep orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. Daniel, still in his crisp dark suit and polished shoes, guided his sleek black sedan to the side of the road. His mind quickly ran through the possibilities. He hadn't been speeding, hadn't run a light, yet he knew from experience that sometimes the reason didn't matter. In the mirror, he saw a young police officer step out of his patrol car, his hand resting casually but firmly on his holstered sidearm. The officer's expression was firm, almost dismissive, as he approached Daniel's window. "License and registration," he said flatly, without greeting or explanation. Daniel complied, moving slowly and deliberately, handing over the documents with a calm that masked his irritation. The officer glanced at them only briefly before his eyes swept over the car's leather interior and Daniel's attire. "You get a car like this?" he asked, his tone dripping with suspicion. Daniel met his gaze, but said nothing more than, "It's mine." The officer's lips pressed into a thin line, and after a long pause, he ordered, "Step out of the car." Daniel exhaled silently, unbuckling his seatbelt. As he stepped onto the cool asphalt, he felt the air between them tighten. The evening breeze carried the sound of passing traffic, but in that moment, it seemed the world had narrowed to just two men on the side of the road, one holding authority in his badge, the other holding a deeper authority the officer had yet to realize. The young officer's voice grew sharper, as he began asking questions that had nothing to do with a traffic violation. "Where do you live? What are you doing in this neighborhood? Why are you dressed like that?" His words carried an unspoken accusation, each one layered with doubt and prejudice. Daniel stood by the trunk of his car, his hands visible at his sides, feeling the weight of each unnecessary question. Cars passed slowly, some drivers stealing curious glances, others deliberately looking away, unwilling to get involved. The officer circled the sedan like a hawk, peering through the windows as if expecting to uncover something that justified his stop. "Stay here," he ordered, retreating to his patrol car to run the information. Daniel knew what that meant. He'd be made to wait, not because it was necessary, but because it was a way to assert control. Minutes ticked by, the hum of idling engines filling the tense silence. Daniel kept his posture straight, his eyes calm but unyielding, replaying the questions in his mind and wondering how many times scenes like this played out every day for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. The officer returned, still wearing that mask of suspicion, and said, "You might need to come with me for questioning." Daniel's brow lifted slightly, the absurdity of the statement almost making him laugh. He knew he had done nothing wrong. Yet here he was, being treated like a suspect for driving home in his own car. He took a slow breath, deciding to let the officer's behavior speak for itself. Every second the man pushed this further. The deeper the trouble he was digging for himself, Daniel had no intention of stopping him. The officer's tone turned from merely suspicious to outright disrespectful as he stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the hood of the car. "People like you shouldn't be driving cars like this," he muttered, as if speaking to himself, though Daniel heard every word clearly. The comment landed like a slap, not for its sting. Daniel had heard far worse in his lifetime, but for its sheer arrogance. Still, he stayed composed, hands loose at his sides, his deep brown eyes locked on the officer's without a flicker of fear. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, not out of amusement, but because he already knew the moment of truth was coming. The officer reached for his radio, calling in a vague report about a suspicious vehicle and uncooperative driver. painting a picture that was as false as it was dangerous. Daniel's heart didn't race. In fact, he felt an almost serene calm settle over him. This was a game the officer thought he was winning, but Daniel knew the rules better than anyone. "You're making a big mistake," Daniel said evenly, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to commanding a courtroom. The officer gave a scoff. "Oh yeah, and who exactly are you?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he let the question hang in the air, the tension building like a held breath. In that pause, the distant wail of another siren began to grow louder, approaching fast. The officer's brow furrowed, glancing toward the sound, unaware that the next few seconds would completely flip the balance of power. Daniel straightened his posture, adjusting his tie with a slow, deliberate motion, ready to end this charade in one devastating reveal. The siren drew closer until a sleek black SUV with tinted windows pulled up behind the patrol car. It's flashing, lights cutting through the fading daylight. The door swung open and out stepped a tall, imposing man in a tailored suit, followed by two uniformed officers from the city's higher division. The young cop's confident posture faltered as he recognized the insignia on their badge's internal affairs. The suited man approached with purpose, his eyes flicking from Daniel to the patrol officer. "Judge Carter, are you all right?" he asked, his tone respectful and direct. The officer's face drained of color, his mouth opening slightly before snapping shut again. He glanced between them, suddenly piecing together the reality of the situation. This was not just any driver. This was Daniel Carter, one of the state's most respected judges. Known for his landmark rulings and zero tolerance for misconduct, especially from law enforcement. The higher-ranking officer turned to the patrolman. "Is there a reason Judge Carter was pulled over without probable cause?" His voice was cold, each word heavy with authority. The patrolman stammered, his earlier arrogance crumbling into incoherent excuses. Daniel remained silent, letting the moment stretch, the weight of his position speaking louder than any words could. The internal affairs officer didn't wait for further explanation. Badge and weapon. Now, the order cut through the air like a blade. The young cop's hands trembled as he unhooked his belt, the reality of his career collapsing around him. Daniel gave a small nod to the suited man, a silent acknowledgement of the swift justice unfolding before them. For the first time that evening, he allowed himself a faint smile, not of revenge, but of quiet satisfaction that the truth had caught up faster than the lies. The scene on the roadside had drawn the attention of passing drivers, some slowing down to record on their phones, others whispering in disbelief at the sudden turn of events. The once confident young officer now stood frozen, stripped of his badge and sidearm, while the internal affairs team documented every detail of the stop. Daniel stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking softly on the asphalt, until he was standing just a few feet from the man who had tried to humiliate him. "Next time you judge someone," Daniel said calmly, "make sure you know who you're talking to, and more importantly, make sure you have a reason." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that cut deeper than any shout. The officer swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the ground, unable to meet Daniel's gaze. The suited man gestured toward the black SUV, inviting Daniel to step inside. But Daniel paused, glancing back at the small crowd that had gathered. In that moment, he knew the lesson wasn't just for the man in uniform. It was for everyone watching. Respect should never depend on race, title, or the car someone drives. He said, his tone firm yet measured. It should be given because it's the right thing to do. Without another word, he entered the SUV, the door closing with a quiet finality. As the vehicle pulled away, the disgraced officer was left standing in the fading light, his career in ruins, his arrogance replaced with a silence heavy with regret. Daniel gazed out the window. the city lights beginning to shimmer in the distance, knowing that while this battle was over, the fight for justice was far from finished. But today, at least, the truth had won. If this story moved you, like, comment, and share to spread the message far and wide. Subscribe to Black Stories for more powerful, real-life tales that will keep you watching until the last word.